Welcome back. Okay, now we've got a Jupyter notebook running. It's time to see what we can actually do in this notebook. So remember in the last lesson we went through this is like your standard menu bar. This is a toolbar, but we're going to avoid using the toolbar because we want to become experts at using our keyboard. All of the things here that you can do, like saving, adding, cutting, copying, pasting, etc., you can do with the keyboard. So what will this save you? Well, instead of clicking run on a cell, so run is how you run some code. So if we go here, maybe we want to print a nice message. Hello world, I'm learning about Jupyter notebooks. We hit shift and enter. We could have done that. I've done that out of habit, right? And that's what we're going to be focused on, is rather than just learning how to use this toolbar to begin with, we're going to be focused from the start on using the keyboard. So I could keep pressing run here, or I could keep pressing shift enter. And now what you might be noticing is that the number on the left is going up every time I hit shift and enter. So remember, I've just got this cell highlighted, pressing shift, enter. That's how you run a piece of code in a Jupyter notebook. Beautiful, isn't it? Now this cell number is going up. All that's saying is that this is the 13th cell. Remember, this is a cell. Could be code or markdown. We'll see that in a second. This cell, or there have been 13 cells run in total in Jupyter. Where this is helpful is if you had something like A equals 5, 14, and then you go A, oh, we didn't mean that, A equals 6. So what do you think A equals now? Because this is 14 and this is 16. If we hit this and hit shift enter, A is going to equal 6. So these numbers are helpful to show us what order our notebook has been run in. So for example, if we had 100 of these different cells with different information, in an ideal world, a notebook is run from top to bottom. But in some cases, you might be working on a project and run a cell up here and then rerun it down here. And later on in your notebook, a few hundred cells down, you've got some kind of error. This is what you can use to figure out what order your notebook was run in. Now, because we've got code here, we can run all of Python's functionality from right in the Jupyter notebook. Shift and enter, 1 plus 2. You'll notice some cells have in and some cells have out. Now, if a cell has an output, like some sort of code output, it will usually have an out number. The out number matches the in number. So this is just saying, hey, there's some input code here, and we've got some output code here. Now, we did have a brief look at this before, code and markdown. This is where the absolute beauty of Jupyter Notebook comes into play, is that you can have code and formatted text, which is what markdown is, within the same notebook. Let me show you an example. Say we wanted to start our project called Heart Disease Project. And remember, Jupyter Notebooks are the workspace of your data science projects. So you can run machine learning code and describe what you're doing right from the notebook. We're going to see this in practice throughout, but I just want to highlight what turning a cell into markdown does. So we can change that to markdown, but remember, we don't want to get used to using the toolbar. So how do we do that? Well, another beautiful thing about Jupyter is that the cells have two simple modes. One is called edit, and you'll notice this little pencil up here and this green box around it. The other is called command mode. Now, how do we switch between the two? Well, as you might have guessed, we can also use the keyboard because remember, we're not getting used to using this toolbar. You might as well pretend it's not even there. So to change from edit to command mode, we're going to press escape. Beautiful. Now we notice that the little green bar has changed to a blue bar and the pencil has gone away. Now before we run this cell, how do we get back to edit mode? To do that, we press enter. Now we get our green box back and the little pencil comes back. Excellent. But we actually want to be in command mode, so we'll go back. Escape. Blue box is back. Pencil is gone. You'll get used to running this, escape and enter, after you've had some experience. I just know how to do these things because I've run thousands of cells in my experience. And we're going to press M for Markdown. I had to think about that because to change it back to code is Y. So watch this little box up here. While we're in edit command mode, with the blue box, we can press M for Markdown or Y for code. But we want Markdown in this case, M. And to run this cell, we're going to hit Shift Enter. Now you see this is some nicely formatted text. So what you could imagine in the future is for a project, you might start it off with a heading up here, and then you might add some information below it. So this project is about classifying whether or not a patient has heart disease. So this is how you can start to communicate your work right from the very beginning of a project. Now, what else could you do here? Well, let's see some data. If we go back to our Keynote, we want to set up this kind of setup. So we want some data in our project folder. We want to run this data through our workspace, which is a Jupyter notebook, and try to use some of these tools. Well, let's get a little taste of that. So if we go here, import pandas as PD, what this is saying is this is code. It's telling Python to go, hey Python, go and get pandas, import it as the shortcut PD, which is very common for pandas. We'll see a little bit more of pandas in a future video. What I'm doing is exemplifying the different types of things you can do in a Jupyter notebook. And please, if you're following along, make sure you're typing this code out by yourself. But if we go type this line of code and hit Shift Enter, what that's going to do is import pandas to this notebook. So now we have access to use pandas, which is one of the tools we installed in our environment within our workspace, the Jupyter notebook. So do you remember in the last lesson how we uploaded some files here? How would we get these files? So this is a heartdisease.csv. How would we get that? Now, if you've never heard of CSV, it's a format called comma-separated values. It's a very common way to store data. But how do you think we'd get that into here? That's all right if you don't know, because you might not have ever gone through this before. But what we're going to do is use pandas to create a data frame. A DF stands for data frame. We're going to read CSV, and we're going to use the file name. Now, another beautiful thing about Jupyter Notebooks is that if you have a file in here, you can use tab for autocomplete. So if we press tab, it's going to pick up heartdisease.csv. And we've already got the other inverted comma, so we're going to select this one. So what is this line of code doing? Well, it's going data frame equals PD, so pandas.readCSV. So this is a function, and we're passing the file name, heartdisease.csv, to the readCSV function. We'll have a complete section on pandas later on, but this is just to exemplify what you can do within a Jupyter notebook. So we're going to hit Shift Enter. You can see that it's run because that number has gone up. But how would we view our data? So another beautiful thing about Jupyter notebooks is that you can view what you're working on straight away. So df.head shows the first 5 rows of your data frame. So if we look here, we've got different columns, we've got different examples. Maybe we wanted to view the first 10 to get a better look. There we go. We'll have a look at this in a future project, but this is just to show you what kind of data Jupyter Notebooks can display. So we might even put a cell in here. So we go escape B for a new cell below. You can also press A for a new cell above, but we're going to remove this one. So escape, double D for delete. Beautiful. We go, the following table shows heart disease information for patients. Escape and press M for Markdown, Shift Enter. Now we've got some communication happening here. Okay, well, we've seen a table. What if we wanted to maybe put in a little graph or something like that and see what this information actually looked like? Because this is pretty confusing. We've got a target column which is full of ones and zeros. I only know that because I've seen this table before. But 1 means someone has heart disease, and a 0, you can't see any on this at the moment, means someone doesn't have heart disease. So what if we wanted to graph that quickly and have a look at how many patients have heart disease and how many don't? And each row here, by the way, is an individual patient, and so these are their parameters. Let's have a look. We can go df.target, which just means access the target value of df. And we're going to go value counts, which just means count the number of occurrences of different values in this column. Then dot plot, which means create a plot of kind, oh, we got that mixed up, kind bar, which just means let's create a bar graph. Let me see, hit Shift Enter, by the way. Why didn't that show up? Well, matplotlib.access. If we go back to our little environment set up here, we've been using pandas to look at this data frame, but we need matplotlib to look at graphs. Okay. The reason I know that is because I've had experience, but we're going to have a look at each of these tools in depth. So what could we do here? Maybe we try to go import matplotlib.py plot as PLT. PLT is a shortcut for matplotlib. We hit Shift Enter. Nothing happens. Now, why is that? Well, remember, Jupyter notebooks are executed in order of operation. So just because we ran a cell down here doesn't mean it's going to influence the cell up here. So what we'll have to do is come back up here and rerun this cell. There we go. So now if we look at the numbers, in 24, in 25, out 25. You see what just happened there? Because we ran this cell before as 24 and this was 23, running this piece of code didn't affect this until we reran it. So that's a very important thing to think about with Jupyter notebooks, is that they're executed in order of operation. And so the other takeaway here is that not only can we look at our data in a table format, we can start to look at it in graph format. So you might be starting to see here, okay, if I can run code cells as well as text cells as well as image cells, I could do my entire project from within this notebook, which is exactly right. See one more thing, and that's if we wanted to import another image. So we'll change this cell to Markdown, escape, M. We're going to use exclamation mark. If you've never written Markdown code before, there's some great guides online on how to write Markdown code. But essentially, any kind of Markdown code you can write in a Jupyter cell. So we want to import the image that we uploaded earlier. .png, and you can do this with any image. So this is within this file folder here. We're just writing it here. You can do this with your own image. Basically what this is Markdown code for saying import this image to the notebook. If we hit Shift Enter, there we go. So this is our framework. Okay, we've seen this before. Now what we might do is create a section for each of these steps. So you could do Markdown again, escape, M. Number 1, problem definition, where we could say predict heart disease. I'm typing out something smaller here. You might want to do something longer. And then we could have escape, BBB, to create 5 or 6 cells. 4, I can't really count. 2, data. This is the data we're using. We're going to hit escape, M, and then Shift Enter. So now you can start to imagine we've got our framework. We could start off with a problem definition. We could then look at a data. Just like we've done here, we could move this down to the data section. Then we could create an evaluation metric. Then we could look at the features of our data. We could do some modeling, and then we could run experiments. All of this from within a Jupyter notebook. Now there's one more thing before we finish up this lecture, because it's getting a bit long, that you can do within a Jupyter notebook. The main 2 takeaways so far is that you can run code, text, and images all within the same space. And the final thing is that you can also run terminal commands from within a Jupyter notebook. So say, for example, we wanted to run ls, just as if we were running ls on the terminal. So if I go here and I put in ls, it's going to list all of the files in my user account. If we do the same in Jupyter Notebook, if we just ran ls in a code cell and hit Shift Enter, that's interesting. That might be an update I haven't seen before. Usually you'd have to type in exclamation mark ls. Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. Maybe you don't need the exclamation mark, but generally, to run a command like ls, like list, you would need the exclamation mark in front of the terminal command. And what this is going to do is go in Jupyter, instead of executing this command like some Python code, execute it, because it's got the exclamation mark there, as if I was running it on the terminal, like this. And so the ls command is just showing us the different files that we have here. All right, well, that's enough for this lesson. Remember, I'm sounding like a broken record here, but this is important to take away, is that Jupyter Notebook cells are run in order of the number. So if we ran here, A equals 5, if we came down to this one and skipped this one, it's going to be A equals 5, but then if we ran this, A would equal 6, and you can run markdown cells, code cells, as well as plot different images, all within the notebook. We're going to have plenty of hands-on experience with this throughout the rest of the course, so stay tuned.